It's January 2023, 12:59 p.m. I'm walking down the corridor of my high school and I'm feeling very, very nervous. You see, today was the day where I would receive my AS level maths results. And these results were super, super important because I needed them to get my predicted grades for A-level maths. And if I messed this one up, I would not get into the university that I wanted to get into. So as I'm walking down the hallway of my school, I'm checking my phone and checking it again, refreshing the page, the results page. I was literally so scared because I didn't know whether I would get these results that I wanted or not. And I kid you not, my hands were literally freezing. My hands and toes were numb. And my heart was literally beating so fast. And I refreshed the page and entered my candidate details on the website. And I looked at my phone, 83%. Shit. I was devastated. I remember staring at my phone in disbelief and scrolling and refreshing my page and entering my candidate details again just to make sure that those results were not mine. Luckily, that exam was my AS level math exam. I took the exam early with my friend, so I had a second chance in June 2023. And it was from that period of January to June where I actually started to lock in and started studying for the exam correctly. I discovered the study system that allowed me to get an 83 on the November exam to getting a 93 in my June exam. And I'm proud to say that I've actually found a way to study effectively. And that's what I want to share to you today. You're probably wondering, what the heck is this diagram, Matthew? Well, it's a diagram that I'm going to explain on how you can study more effectively and study the right way. Because if you don't start studying correctly now, it's going to be too late for you. Okay, so first thing, what is this? This is a bucket full of water. Where does the water come from? You might be asking. It comes from class, it comes from reading textbook, and it comes from watching YouTube videos. This is when you read and absorb the material for the very, very first time. This is the time when you go to class. So imagine this water as the amount of information you're able to absorb and remember. I want you to keep that in mind because I'm going to use that for the rest of the diagram. You might be wondering, why is there two different water levels? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the water level represents how much information you actually absorb from the very first time. And the amount of information you absorb actually depends on your focus. Studies have showed that when you're focused, you have more active engagement and you can actually remember the material much more effectively than if you were just listening passively and not actually paying attention. Because if you pay more attention in class, obviously you're going to be able to absorb more of the information. So when it comes to studying, the very, very first thing you need to optimize is not the study tips, the study methods, or whatever study hack out there you see on the internet. It's your focus. Your focus is super, super important, and it determines how well you study and whether you study effectively or study slow. So here's a couple of ways to improve your focus. So the first thing is you want to change your environment. Your environment literally dictates your actions. If there was one thing that completely changed the way I studied, it was changing my environment. I used to study in my room, but I realized that when I was in my room, I was actually distracted by so many other objects around me. And so now, since I've entered university, I've actually learned to study in the library. And when I study in the library, let me tell you, I am so much more focused and so much more attentive because the library is the environment where I'm primed to work. The second thing to optimize your focus is to study less. And you're probably wondering, wait, study less? Wait, that doesn't make sense because shouldn't I be studying more to get the better results that I want? Shouldn't I be studying more to get more results, right? It logically makes the most sense, right? If you study more, you're going to get better grades. But it's actually not like that because I'm going to introduce you something called the study equation. And it states that studying output is equal to time times intensity squared. Study output equals time times intensity squared. So from the equation alone, you can see that if your intensity is low, then you need to spend more time to get the same study output. Let's say I wanted 10 study output And let's say I had an intensity of 1 squared. Well, I would need 10 hours in order to get 10 study outputs. And you can see right now, it's very, very inefficient. But let's say I wanted the same 10 study outputs, but my intensity is 2. Well then, now I only need 2.5 hours to study because my intensity, I only increased the intensity by 1. But you can see I spend so much less time to study. It's honestly crazy. So by studying less, you can actually study more. Because when you say you study 10 hours, you're probably studying at a very, very low intensity. But if you study only 2 hours or 3 hours with a really, really high intensity, you're going to be able to save way less time and also maximize the amount of information you actually remember. So now you're probably wondering, what are these pipes? What are they here for? So these pipes represent your study methods, aka the techniques that you use to study. A crappy study method, like rewriting your notes and rewatching your YouTube videos and rereading your textbook and slides, are going to go into the really small pipe category. And as you can see, when the pipe is small, the amount of water that can go through the pipe is actually a lot less. Because remember, you want to get as much water in your brain as possible, because the water represents the amount of information you remember. So what does a big pipe look like? What kind of study methods can I use in order to make this pipe bigger so that I can actually pour more water into my brain? Well, the first one is past papers. Single best studying method, no question about it. But there's a smarter way to do this. Rather than your conventional grind as many past papers as possible and just mark them all one by one. What I like to do personally is to go through topical past papers. If you're taking the IGCSE, A-level, or AS-level exams, there are plenty of topical past papers that you can literally find on the internet right now. And they're completely free. You don't even need to use like Save My Exams or anything. You can literally just find them on the internet. And here's the thing, when it comes to topical past papers, I personally like to study the topic that I am weakest at first. Because imagine your subjects, like the topic chapters, like a chain, right? If you pull on the chain, aka when you're taking the exam, if one of your chain is weak, the whole chain will snap. It's because the exam will probably target your weakest link. There's probably going to be that one chapter right now that's kind of holding you back from getting really good scores in your past papers. And you want to actually target that weak link so that when you go into the exam, you're not screwed over by any question. Okay, the second study method that I personally use is flashcards. First of all, I want to say that flashcards is not my main studying method. I study using past papers, and every single one of you should be using past papers to study. I use flashcards when I need to remember terms, definitions, and formulas. When I need to remember terms, definitions, or formulas. These are very, very important that I need to remember. So when I was taking my A-level computer science exam, it had a theory component and a programming component. So for the theory component, it was literally all memorizing. 4-mark answers, 2-mark answers, 3-mark answers. I needed to remember those straight from the mark scheme, straight from the textbook. So what I did was I used this app called RemNote, and I put every term and definition question that came up in the past year exams into this flashcard app. And so I would do these kind of like every single day just to help me remember the information much better. When it comes to a theory component, it's just regurgitating what you remember. So using flashcards actually helps you remember, and it literally burns the information into your brain, especially when it comes to spaced repetition, which I'm going to discuss in just a little bit. Okay, so the last thing, you're probably wondering why I have this little hole down here. Because here's the thing, your brain is actually very, very good at forgetting the information that you've just learned. Try to remember the information that you learned like 2 years ago from, I don't know, grade school or something like that. You're probably not going to be able to remember it, right? Like me personally, I literally do not remember things that I've learned in when I was in year 9 and year 10. I literally forgot all of that. There's this thing called the forgetting curve, and it states that the more time you give your brain, the more information you actually forget. But there's actually a way to combat the forgetting curve. It's using this thing called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is like refilling this water that's in your brain, filling it up to the max, like this. And you can do this by using active recall methods. Because when you're using passive studying methods, you can only maybe fill it up to like this level. You don't want that to happen, right? You want to fill it up to the max. So you want to use active recall techniques, like I mentioned, such as topical past papers and flashcards, because those two are the most effective ones. But here's the thing. Here's the very, very funny thing. When you pour the water into your brain up to the max again, you actually slightly patch the hole a little bit. You're making the hole smaller and smaller. And what happens is that the rate of forgetting curve, the rate of forgetting actually decreases. It becomes flatter. And the more you do this, right? The more you do this, the more information you're able to remember. And this is what you want. This is when the material is burned into your brain forever. It's put into long-term memory, and it's very, very difficult for you to actually forget the information. And this is why cramming does not work. And this is why you need to be starting early, especially during exam season right now. Because the more time you give yourself and the more time you spend revising the same thing over and over again, the more you're going to put that information into long-term memory so that you can use it on the day of the exam. I hope you got tons of value from this video, but if you want more study tips, study advice on how to become an academic weapon, you might want to check out my free community, Successful Students, linked in the description below. But as always, may God guide us on the right path, and I'll see you in the next video. Lock in, bro.